recording.
Okay, my name is Janet, and I graduated last week from Cognitive FX. I came here on Tuesday, I believe it was, I started. I was in an auto accident. I was rear-ended in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago today. Today's my 2-year anniversary. And I thought it was fine. In fact, I looked last night at my text messages that I had sent saying that there were no damages and I had no injuries and everything was going to be fine. And in fact, there's this ironic final text message that I have that says, you know, no blood, no injuries, it'll all be fine. But it really was the gateway to changing my life. So over the next couple of years, really over the next maybe 6 months, my brain began to decline, sort of rather slowly over the summer, but then went off a precipitous cliff in the fall. And by the end of fall, approaching Thanksgiving and Christmas, I was unable to recognize nouns, what they meant. I would understand that I knew the word, but I would have no connection to the word. My memory had fallen apart. My ability to make sense of sentences, focus, concentration, all of that, but also my vision was dramatically affected. So at the time I believed I made no connection to the accident, which is, I think, one of the insidious sort of side effects of this type of an injury, is that you don't really connect it to what's happening in your life. So I believed that maybe I had some sort of a brain tumor and was going blind. It was a very frightening period for me. So I talked to a number of people, went to a number of doctors, and no one really knew how to help me. They did some MRIs, things looked pretty good. No one really understood what the issue was. And then I had someone suggest that I try vision therapy. So I went into vision therapy, and I did vision therapy for close to 16 months, and it was fantastic. We corrected my vision. We corrected vision issues from when I was a child, and I achieved perfect vision in a way that I've never experienced in my life before. However, I had assumed that all of my issues, concentration, focus, etc., inability to function, were associated with the visual issues. So when all of the visual issues were resolved, I had no finish line to look forward to. It was as if I was looking out at the Sahara Desert with no more answers. I still had no focus and no concentration. My memory was still in pieces. There were times during the day where, multiple times in a day, I couldn't remember what it was that I had been doing, sometimes even within the same minute. So I was still highly impaired in terms of being able to function for my job. I'll mention that I'm a scientist for the Forest Service with a PhD, so I'm expected to function at a fairly high level. And so in, I'd say, pretty much a Hail Mary pass, a moment of desperation, it took me 3 weeks to get a point of clarity to where I could finally construct an email, and I sent that to Dr. Norman Doidge, who I recognized as one of the world's leading authorities on brain plasticity, which is a subject I have never questioned. I've used it all my life. And I asked him, where should I go? Gave him my background, and Dr. Doidge pointed me in the direction of Cognitive FX. So I pulled together what resources I had and had some people help me to get my trip put together, and came out here on a rather nightmarish trip coming out because my capacity was so diminished, and started my therapy here. I would say that I had a lot of faith in what Norman Doidge had to say, but I also had a tremendous amount of fear that this was my place of last resort, and if it was to fall through, that I would be trapped forever in what I call a walking coma. So my first day here was challenging, my second day here was challenging, and after my second day I thought I would sleep 10 hours that night, as exhausted as I was, and I slept almost nothing. And it was a very long and grinding night for me, where I felt so much electricity going through my body, and I experienced it as a very intense experience. I came back in on my third day, and it would appear that during the night my brain was turning on, which might explain why I had no sleep. So on my third day, as exhausted as I was when I came in with 2 broken hours of sleep, by the time I left, I had more energy than when I had come in. So it was clear that something was ramping and that something was changing. And by the time I got to my 4th day, I was pretty much a different person. I think for everybody here who saw me, came in and just felt like taking on the world and blazed through task after task after task that was handed to me. Speed, fast, memory, everything. It was as if I was re-experiencing my personality all over again. So at the end of my 4th day, we did my flanking functional MRI, and the results were fantastic, just fantastic. And we could clearly see all of the areas where my brain had bottomed out and was just not firing. I'd been saying for the past year to my boss and colleagues, I don't know what's happened to my filters, for instance, and those areas of my brain had been entirely bottomed out and are now firing and functioning, sensory perception, all of these different areas that have been basically, well, they just had not been firing, so I had nothing. In fact, when I walked through the door, one of my primary complaints was that my brain just would not populate for anything. I could think of something like, I need a towel, and my brain would not even populate what a towel looked like, just no information, things we take for granted. So I talked to my director from work the other day on Saturday morning after having graduated here on Friday, and he said that I sounded like a miracle had happened to me, and I said, yeah, I feel like it. I pretty much feel like it. So I'm controlling my emotional response right now because this is much bigger than I can convey in a video format, and it's going to take me a little while to absorb the fact that this nightmare has ended and I'm going into a whole new life for myself. And I'm very, very grateful and thankful for the people here, for the whole team here. It's just an amazing, caring, loving team. Anybody coming here will feel loved and cared for, and you'll take you from start to finish over the finish line. So I cannot recommend this place highly enough. Thank you.